Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs universe. Today we're doing the second part of my review of these lenticular 2011 Animorphs Re-issues, which last time I came to the conclusion that they aren't as bad as people say, but also they're not great and they didn't do much for the Animorphs series, but then what has, honestly. Today what we're going to do is we're going to go through these books and spot the changes, because when they did these reissues, somebody went in and edited them to make them more modern for the 2011 audience. And as I went through these books, I read them all, I picked out every change I could find. I'm not going to say I've got them all. I think I've got the majority of them at least, I think. And it ranges from massive sentence overhauls or paragraphs removed down to a comma moved or an apostrophe added. Little changes like that. So forgive me if I haven't found them all. We're going to go through them now, and one book at a time we're going to do it. And then by the end, I'll just round up what I think are the most important ones, whether, anything else I feel is necessary. So let's start with book one, The Invasion. What changes came in the 2011 edited version? Sega was changed to System. On Star Trek was changed into In Star Trek. Cloned a person and a deer becomes fused a person and a deer. Rachel doesn't demand anymore, she asks. She's a lot more polite this time. Hawk-Bajir in the old book are called salad shooters. They're still called that, but apparently now salad shooter no longer has the space between salad and shooter. As long as you don't direct them to him. Changes to unless you are morphed and you direct them to him. This whole sentence was removed. Tobias stuck a sliced finger into his mouth. Jake was able to transmit his thoughts to Tobias even though he wasn't in morph. That was obviously changed in this version. Catherine Applegate wasn't that great with anatomy when she first wrote these books, so knees suddenly don't reverse direction this time. They just fold differently. Words like radical are no longer modern in 2011. Same with aerobics, apparently. Same applies to the word freakazoid. That one's a bit weird for me. It's pretty obvious what it means. This is a pretty big change. So Dead Zone 5 is still there, even though I don't think people in 2011 know what that means, surely. But obviously, CD games are no longer a thing. Nor are computers, apparently. Catch You Guys becomes See You Guys. Massive change, that one. Just like Rachel earlier, Jake no longer demands things, he asks. This one was very subtle. The not is no longer italicized. Boom boxes are no longer a thing in Animorphs. It's correctly pointed out to Catherine, apparently, that spiders don't have compound eyes, they just have multiple eyes. This one just removes the word side from paths. Once again, italics are removed in this case. Another correction, it was Frankenstein's monster, not Frankenstein himself. Added a couple more words to this one. Remove a word from this one. This is an interesting one. So Visser 3 goes from having vertical slits for his eyes to having horizontal slits for his eyes. Of course, Jake would be lying in his own bed. Why would he not be? So those are all the changes evident in book one. There's a few interesting ones there. Of course, the whole bit where Jake and Tobias are talking to each other and figuring out who can talk to who while somebody's morphed and somebody's not. That was changed and that's understandable. The whole knees snapping backwards when you're morphing is an example of KA getting things wrong. Same with the spider. So largely uncontroversial, the changes in this one. A few awkward ones, like everyone knows what a freakazoid is. Why remove that? Like I mentioned earlier, some of these changes just seem completely arbitrary, like they're not even really necessary to change. But then there are the ones that are. So Tobias licking the blood off his finger, which definitely needs removing because that fits with the rest of the series. Visser 3 having horizontal eyes rather than vertical eyes is an interesting choice. When it says horizontal or vertical slits, does that mean pupils or the actual eyes? They're like that sort of thing. Or are they like the opposite, like that, But again, that's sort of in between. It's not completely arbitrary, but it's also not that important. Let's move on to the changes in The Visitor 2011 edition. Yerks are now present tense rather than past tense. Bald eagles are no longer an endangered species, but a national symbol. Creepazoid, much like Freakazoid, is no longer relevant. That's not our bag anymore. just creepy now. Breaks you out changes to freaks you out. Honestly, did anyone ever say that was so absolute? I'm happy for this change. No longer is Cassie a fashion extremist, she's just faulty. Very subtle on this. It's not me and Marco that caused it, it's me and Marco who caused it. Marco's casual misogyny is changed slightly. It's still there, but instead of calling them skanks, he calls them dogs. Same difference. This one happens quite a lot. In the original print, human controllers had an uncapitalized H and a capitalized C. In the reprints, every time human controllers are brought up, it's capital H, capital C. Shannon Miller no longer exists or existed, and now she's just been replaced with a random gold medalist. Dis is now make fun of. I even know what dis means. Come on, youth of today, catch up. Step off is now back off. Much like Shannon Miller, Arnold Schwarzenegger no longer exists, and he's just a bodybuilder. CDs, that's old school. We're all about albums nowadays. Dweeb is a great word. I don't know why they replaced it with clown. Dweeb's great, keep that one. Once again, CD, outdated. It's all about just listening to music. Just a little change of phrasing for this one. It made slight grinding there was a slight grind. I can't even freaking say it. Ate each other is now ate one another. Quite literally forget Morris the cat. The irony, scritching is now scratching. Rachel, drug use is no longer recommended in the Animorphs series. Just chill it out. Once again, we don't like the word scritchy. That's no longer a thing. We're back to scratchy. Let's make it easy. Like in the first book, on Star Trek is now in Star Trek. Very subtle, very small, but obviously incredibly important. And another incredibly important one, instead of went on, he continued. Because that was an absolutely necessary edit for the... we couldn't have printed the books without that one. Pop is now soda, which I think is strange because certain areas in America say it differently. I think some states say pop and some say soda, so I think this is just discrimination, honestly. You're taking it away from those states and giving it to the other without their permission. That's non-consensual. This one, they just apparently didn't want to mention Superman for some reason. Freaky becomes freaked. This is an unusual one because this is only in the audiobooks. Only in the audiobooks. Because, sorry, I've always wanted to write that becomes sorry, I've always wanted to say that makes more sense if you're reading. So that's an unusual one. That's audiobook only. Patting my head apparently goes too far, so we're only patting the back this time. This one has two changes in it. Obviously we have to change human controllers, so it's capital H, and then instead of increasing the guard around the controller, it's increased the security around the controller. You'll notice that salad shooters is changed. Salad shooters no longer has the space between salad and shooters in the reissues. It's now all one word, but still capitalized on the shooters there. It's also no longer in past tense, it's in present tense. That whole paragraph originally was for some reason written in past tense, as opposed to everything around it, so thankfully it was changed in this edition. But it was hard, just like before, past tense has now been changed to present tense, but it's hard to look at Horbagier. Instead of Taxon teeth actually being needles, they're now needle-like. Shaking like a leaf is now offensive to the youth of today, so just trembling harshly will do. I saw something is now I had seen something. Word processors no longer a thing. Just like computers weren't a thing earlier, now they are a thing again. So we can have a computer now rather than a word processor. Those were the changes in book 2. Nothing quite as important as there was in book 1 there. Again, random changes. I think this one had the most amount of just completely arbitrary changes in it. Some that just didn't seem necessary. There was a lot of stuff where it changed past tense into present tense, which was correct to do. There was also the first example here of a line changing, not for the reissue, but for the audiobooks, which made sense in this particular case. Let's move on to book 3. Dweeb is now dork. Big difference there. Wildlife Rehabilitation Center is now the Wildlife Rehabilitation Clinic. I don't know why this change was necessary. Places is now spots. Jake just smiled. That's all he did. Oh wait, no, scratch that. He smiled. He might have done other things as well, but he definitely smiled. Tobias is talking to himself here, like he's talking at himself, so instead of me, it's you, apparently. Feet, they added A before Tyrannosaurus Rex here, which does make more sense, to be fair. There wasn't a single Yerk slug controlling all of whoever they're talking about. There was a Yerk slug in each brain, okay? Jake owns these baby clothes as well. The boxes weren't full of Jake and Tom's old baby clothes. You know, Jake hadn't been chopped up and put in these boxes. Punks, nah, we like punks now. We don't like jerks though. We added a comma here, which made sense. Something the original editor must have missed. It's no longer his little drawer. It's just a drawer. We don't want to make it too cute. It's not a little drawer. We take out voluntary here, which largely was its purpose, but I suppose it's not all-encompassing, so fair enough. They didn't all come out of the closet separately. They just appeared. Obviously, the youth of today can't actually like process in their heads that gymnastics means a gymnastic class. So we had to make it clearer. Oh, come on. If Dead Zone 5, we can remember that apparently, but Doom? We can't remember Doom? Look, there's nothing wrong with Doom. Just keep Doom. You forgot the comma again, previous editor. God's sake. Another example of Salad Shooter being adjusted slightly. Yet again, Human Controllers has capitalized H now, and Tobias no longer carries a sack, he's carrying a pouch. That's a necessary distinction to make. There's more than just one scrub brush now around this cave entrance. Once again, Human Controller capitalized H. Once again, missing comma. Original person who wrote this didn't know how to use freaking commas apparently. This sentence reads much nicer, to be fair, in the new edit because it was originally written pretty poorly. Nightmare becomes nightmarish. I don't see the point in that one. Human Controller capitalized again, and same again here. There's actually quite a lot of these, so forgive me because the next one's going to be a capitalized H changed too. See what I mean? Same again, capital change. No real control over becomes no real power over. Seems arbitrary to me. This is an interesting change. So originally Cassie and Marco were first. They both morphed an Osprey. But then it was just Cassie in the new edit. And then the rest of the sentences pretty much changed as well. So Longwings replaced her flailing arms becomes Longwings replaced their flailing arms. So the order in which they're morphing is changing here. It's all just cleared up a bit. This is another pretty big change. So instead of Marco barely making it and falling out into the forest out of sight, it's Rachel who does the same, which makes more sense in the context of all that goes on in this chapter. So there are the changes for book 3. Mostly arbitrary again, not too important, but the last couple there where it changes the order of things in the final climax bit does make a lot more sense. It reads a lot better. There's a lot of commas missing in this book, which the edit adjusts and corrects. But a lot of these changes are the same. So a lot of commas added. Human Controller, obviously the H is capitalized in humans. That makes up a lot of the changes as well. There's not too much that changes in this one. I can't believe they had mentioned Dead Zone 5 previously, but Doom is apparently no longer recognizable, nor is Arnold Schwarzenegger, but we'll get on to more mentions of him soon anyway. But let's move on to book 4, which has, from what I recall, the least amount of changes by far. This first one is another example of audiobook only change, and it's a strange one. So, a mourning dove who'd run into a car windshield is now who'd flown into a car windshield. But this wasn't actually changed in the 2011 reissue, it's only changed for the audiobook reading, strangely enough. Instead of a pair of wolves being poisoned, one had been poisoned and the other had been shot. I don't see the point in this change. Instead of running straight up the wall, she runs farther up the wall. Marco suggests calling the psychic friends, but apparently they're outdated. To be fair, I don't know who the psychic friends are, but now they're just a psychic hotline. Although there is someone called Madame Zora, whoever the hell that is. I'm sure if there was a 2023 reprint, she'd be gone as well, and it would just be some psychic. This is a subtle one. So there's a full stop at the end of Andalites on this one, but then in the re-edit, it's a comma, I said. just to make it clear who's saying this thing. Cassie no longer has a great-grandmother. It's just her grandmother. I don't know why we're eliminating family members now. Walkmans, outdated tech, drink. Apparently they missed out the word "ah" in the previous version. Yeah, to be fair, giggling like idiots for a few minutes. That's weird. You don't just sit there laughing for minutes on end. It makes much more sense if they just giggled for a little while. Because then it's like 10, 20 seconds tops. Rather than frickin' 5 minutes of just... Same sort of applies for this one here. Everyone kept a straight face for about 10 seconds, which is a long time to keep a straight face. So thankfully we just changed it to a few seconds. Axe's name is wrong in this first book. There's only one L, whereas in further versions it's 2 L's at the end of Istil. So they change it here, thankfully. Apparently there was a problem with weight in the previous edition. Like they completely got the relative weight of things wrong. So that was adjusted for this book. And that's it. That's all that there is to change in this one, the message. There really aren't that many, which I was surprised by. But there are a few. And what there is it that important? Not really. Apparently, she no longer has a great-grandmother, just a grandmother. So, I don't know why the need for that change is what it is. Yeah, hardly anything changed in this one. It was hardly even worth editing it, to be honest. This one has the least amount. Don't worry, the rest of the books, the next 4, all have more substantial stuff going on. Let's take a look at Book 5, The Predator. Once again, we don't like the word punks anymore. Punks are good guys now. We like punks. And not only do we not like we do like punks now, but we don't like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger banned to the abyss to be replaced by just some random bodybuilder. I'm sorry to have to keep calling them punks. We need to change it. Just guys now. Just guys. We like punks. Oh wait, sorry. They're not guys anymore. They're muggers. they're muggers now. See, I told you. I told you they were muggers. You didn't trust me. Well, now you should trust me. So she's not doing a massive forward flip 360 no-scope anymore. She's just doing a front handspring. Yeah, in this book, they forgot that it's a red-tailed hawk, not a red tail. I believe this happens a couple of times in this one. It's a red-tailed hawk. Oh, and we still were getting Axe's name wrong in this, so we had to add the extra L again in this edit. Another subtle one, 8 is changed to eats for Axe with no mouth. This is one of those rare ones where they pluralize Hawkbajir with an S. That's one of those rare mistakes that they made, so it was good to spot that one. This is one of those examples where they remove the whole sentence. Instead of asking also or any other controller, they take that bit out. So it's just how many times have you fought Hawkbajir. Apparently the Limited is no longer a shop. That just doesn't exist anymore. They're just carrying clothes from clothing stores. Same with Circuit City. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, we don't even need to explain what Starbucks is anymore. People don't need to be told it's a coffee place. We just know because it's just monopolized the market. Jesus Christ, inflation is hitting hard, isn't it? I mean, come on, the prices are just... This is 2011, remember? What would it be now? Come on, guys, it's not a window, it's a counter. Why can't you get this through your thick skulls? He put a sleeve on. How can we not understand this? I really like the phrase hacked off. I don't know why they needed to change this. It's another example where they take all the fun out of the sentence. You can't get Cinnabon wrong. That's extortionate. That's not the right word. That's not the right use of the word extortionate, but I'm leaving it there because that's how sick of it I am. Yeah, people won't put in baskets in the doorway now. Apparently it's carts, so like shopping carts. They changed this sentence and I think it was a pretty unnecessary change. I think we know what was going on in that particular scene. They italicize my body here as if he's talking to himself. Pan is turned to pot and he lands atop the stove rather than above the stove. So we don't like the word ragged out again. Once again, it's just taking the flavour out of a lot of these sentences. It's dumbing it down for the damn you for today who don't know a thing and they all need to get jobs. They remove a redundancy, which a small little. Yeah, sort that out. Another example of red-tailed hawk being written wrong. And I get the feeling this was... So in all the other books, it's been written correctly. So I reckon those are all Catherine writing those books. And then this is where Michael got involved. And he hadn't quite got his head around the idea of a red-tailed hawk rather than a red-tail hawk. The order of names has changed here, so it makes a bit more sense. I'm happy with that one. It's not too necessary, but still happy with it. This one, basically the same thing. It makes a little more sense in my head, but it's not too necessary. And once more, it's no longer we hooked up, it's we met up. CD, of course, that's got to go. We've already established that. We've put a hyphen between Hawk-Bajir and Controller, as it has been in the previous books. So it's keeping it consistent. A little tiny change. Should is now should've. The youth for today don't know what a Cuisinart is, and to be fair, nor do I. So, whatever. Couple of changes here. Hyphenated Hawk-Bajir controllers, and also it's not had ever, it is has ever. Took out the word of, so it's no longer a couple of dozen of the Hawk-Bajir. It's a couple dozen of the Hawk-Bajir. Apparently JCPenney still exists, but the formatting of the name has changed, and the 2011 edits have changed to reflect that. Salad Shooters, same change as before. Human Controller is both hyphenated and capitalized in this instance. Instead of just a normal video game like they have done before, Doom is now just about anything that required two hands and a screen. Why don't you just keep Doom? I'm sure even the youth of today know what Doom is. There you have it, that's book 5. But there's... I get the feeling that it's definitely Michael Grant that took control of writing this book, because there's a lot of things in this that are not consistent with the mistakes of the last book or the grammar used in previous books, like Red Tail Hawk, for example, rather than Red-Tailed Hawk. It's only really in this book that was an issue. And then hyphenating Hawk-Bajir Controller was different. So yeah, there's just a few grammatical changes, unless it was a different editor who came along, but I'm not so sure about that. I think it was Tonya Alicia Martin, I think that's her name, who edited most of these. But then it also says for Michael at the start, so why would Michael write it to himself? Your guess is as good as mine. But anyway, that's book 5 done. Let's move on to book 6 once I've let my camera recharge. Now that I've got charge back in my camera, let's look at the changes in book 6, The Capture re-edit. So now instead of Jake telling himself and then telling himself further, he just told himself the once. You know what I mean. Further away is now farther away, with italicized. Why is it italicized? Do we just turn it Italian? Hey, Italy! It's a me, Mario. But we don't know, it's no longer Italian, ever. There you go. So he's not the most important controller, because the most important controller we know clearly is Visser 1 at this point. So yes, correct, edit, you changed it. It's no longer an automatic read dial. We've moved on past those days. It's just checking the calls now. See, this just brings me back, the idea of VCRs and taping stuff. Do you remember those days if you're from the 90s as well? Those are the great days. The youth for today of 2011, they don't remember those things. It's all about recording. Record. Like before, and every other time, Human Controllers now has capital H. I like how we just take out any specificity here, and it's just soon. We can't be dealing with time constraints. Boston Market, are those still a thing? I've never even heard of that. There's another audiobook only one. Instead of Human Morph, it's now Human Form, which is very strange, but that's another audiobook only one. Who knows why, that's the case. This is weird. So it's not just a classic Spider-Man number 3, it's a classic Ultimate Spider-Man number 3. I don't know the difference. So when the Fly with Jeff Goldblum was released, it was new. But of course, we're 10 years further down the line now at least. So it's no longer new, so now it's just the one with Jeff Goldblum. This is an interesting one, because the context of this is that they picked up a bunch of clothes and somebody asked them if they want assistance, and Cassie just says no. And then they walk away, having not paid for their clothes. So the editor came to this for the 2011 reissue and said, hold on a minute, they've just committed theft, we need to change that. So they put in that they paid for the stuff that they were buying, and then headed to the food court. Human controllers capitalized again, of course. Apparently we need to know that she knelt down rather than just knelt. 10-114, all the numerics are capitalized here. This is one of those rare ones as well, because in the old book, Aximili's name is not hyphenated, so they corrected that in the edit. Human controllers, yada yada yada. 10-114, all capitalized again. And something I forgot to mention before, Sulpniarpol now has 2 A's in Niar. This is the classic example of a complete retcon. So we used to have Undervisors, but then that got changed to Subvisor, and that is reflected here. Or we stick away from the cassettes and VCRs, because that's too nostalgic for me. I think this one's pretty arbitrary, honestly. They forgot there in the last one. Obvious change needed. This is yet another audiobook only change. Instead of but I don't think, in the audiobook, not the 2011 edition, it's changed to but I didn't think. For who remembers floppy disks? I hardly ever used them. I think I got into school just as those were coming out of fashion, but I do remember them. This one is also completely arbitrary. Just changed the order of the sentence. Anyone else remember when they called them cellular phones rather than cell phones? Because to be honest, I don't. There you have it. There's book 6. A lot of technology-based ones, and not JCPenney's, but the names of restaurants or shops are changed to be more reflective of the time it was edited in. The most important one here, I think, is where they changed it so it was obvious that Cassie didn't commit theft. Which, they'd probably change it back to the original state in 2023, honestly. Now then, let's take a look at the penultimate in this little reissue set. Number 7, The Stranger. And of course we've got to start with the obvious human controller one. The Animorphs Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals is the only proper way to say it. They just had to add here, because it wasn't clear enough, it wasn't obvious enough, almost like a religion. And then of course as further books went on, that whole aspect of it just became a dropped plot line. So completely arbitrary, honestly. Human controllers, blah 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 blah. This one is quite funny because Rachel had locked the door and then he just walked in anyway. So thankfully in the edit, she unlocked the door and then he came in, rather than him doing that thing that spies do with the paperclip. Because that just was completely redundant. Instead of lay, it's lie. Complete lies. Once again, hooked up. Kids aren't cool enough anymore. They don't get this. They don't speak jive. This sentence is just completely changed in a number of ways, and just read it. You just figure it out yourselves. Salad shooters. There you go. That change again. And joining in the ring is human controllers one again. And throw some more in there while you're at it as well. In fact, just throw them. Let's just do right. That one. And then there's another one here, and there's one coming in from the left as well, and then there's one coming in from the right. Human controllers everywhere. That's all the edits. All the edits are basically human controller related now. And don't forget this one too. Finally, we're out of the human controller territory now. We can calm down with that. No more human controller stuff. Now we're talking grizzlies, and we're just removing the word species here. Why? Don't ask. Oh, wait, sorry, no. More human controllers. More. We decided we didn't want to hyphenate 930 anymore. I'm hooked on reading about all these times they took out the word hooked from this series. They're talking about some TV character, and because we're 10 years down the line, that TV character is now an old TV character. Just had to, once again, JCPenney being very clear on what we're talking about here. People don't. Previously it was J.C.pennies and they didn't like that, and now we put pennies and they didn't like that. It needs to be exact so that people know where to go buy their clothes from, because this is a classic case of subliminal advertising. Oh, and if you thought we were done with the human controller stuff, here's more of it. And you thought that was all? More! And I'm sorry to say, but more. Something awesome and terrible is now something awesome and horrible, because that's the next level up, obviously. I think this is like a reference to Yellowstone. When did they bring wolves back into Yellowstone? But it's no longer just the national forest that wolves reintroduced to. It's now national parks in general. The world isn't like math, it's now the world isn't like arithmetic. Instead of that drop shaft, it's now the drop shaft, Cassie said. They don't like the word further, apparently, in this series, because every time it comes up, it's changed to farther. And honestly, I do write a lot, but even I can't really fathom the difference there. I need to look that up. And just to finish off, here's another human controller. There's number 7, and it's mostly the capitalization of human controller. Apart from that, really nothing important has changed here. Yeah, this is probably the second most inconsequential edit of the whole bunch. There's nothing really majorly retconned here. Or any retcons that have been changed to no longer be retcons. So yeah, this one's second on the list of inconsequential edits. Let's move on to the last one, which I don't have a physical copy for. It's book 8, The Alien. Even more of a big hero. Screw that, he's just going to be an even bigger hero. Apparently this place called Nordstrom used to be his. So Nordstrom's, he owned it. Now it's just him. Or her. Not discriminating. So apparently Junior Miss must have been closed down, because it's just the juniors department now. I don't know these American shops. I'm just assuming Junior Miss was a shop that, in between this year and the 2011 re-edit, closed down, went bankrupt or whatever. So on a hand of 7 fingers, 2 of them melted together. Which, yeah, looking back, would mean you're left with 6 fingers. So in the edit, it's just they melted away to leave with 5 fingers. So that's correct. There's a whole thing about Marco's hair length in the first 10 books or so. Because in book 10, he had a haircut. But now they've changed it so that he already had a haircut, apparently, by book 8. Which actually doesn't make sense. This is a bad edit in my point of view. Because book 10 is where, I think canonically, he had a haircut. His hair went short. But they've taken out the long brown hair here. Once again, Schwarzenegger no longer exists, no longer relevant, we don't like him. Screw your freedom, Schwarzenegger. You're just macho now. What is the Ice Capades? Well, whatever it is, it's now changed to the Winter Olympics. Why would somebody want to escape from the Winter Olympics? Beavis and Butthead, who remembers that? It's actually newer than Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, but obviously which series was more successful over time? So now we're not just generalizing movies. That's how some movies are. Not all of them. This is an important one, I think. It's not one of those... So like in book 1, we had some important things where stuff that had been retconned was still present in the first books, and it was changed. This is another example. So Axe is in a human morph, which means technically he should be able to thought speak. At the start of the series, or near the start of the series in general, this wasn't a thing. If you were in a human morph, you couldn't thought speak because it was the natural language. But now they can. So they changed it so that Axe just simply didn't have enough time because Tobias just kept rambling on in his usual manner. And this one is just Tobias said is now he said, because obviously they'd used the word Tobias too much. This one is going to come up quite frequently in this one, the distance between Earth and the Andalite planet. So in previous versions, he said it was about 1 billion Earth miles from home. Now it's about 500 quadrillion miles from the home world. And if you want to know why this was changed, you just have to look in Google how far 1 billion miles is from us. If you look at the solar system that we're in, Uranus is 1.6 billion miles away. Neptune is just under 1 billion miles away. So in the original series, the Andalite homeworld is somewhere between Neptune and Uranus. Thankfully, they had enough sense in the edits to change that. Another thing I'm very happy about is the fact that they know that snakes aren't poisonous. At least 1 or 2 are, but generally venomous snakes aren't poisonous. So they changed that here, thankfully. And another good edit, this book's full of good edits. Recently never heard of any other intelligent species trying to walk on two legs. Yes, I think you do. Andalites, you know of other races that walk on two legs quite sufficiently. So thankfully that whole paragraph is just taken out. Just hang in is now just hang on. That's a bit more arbitrary. Apparently the school doesn't have a playground. It's a quad now. Because that's cooler. That's more hip and trendy with the kids of nowadays. Prince Jake and the humans could never be true Shawms. The book tried to clarify they could never be his true Shawms. Because otherwise kids would just be confused. They can't ever have friends, ever. No, they just can't have Axe as their true Shawn. Once again, the whole billion miles from home. Yeah, thankfully that was changed. This is another one of those that didn't really need changing, but it's just, you know, for particularly dull-witted people, it just needed a bit clearer explanation. And this one's much in the same vein. Yet we know we're not talking about any of Axe's moons, we're talking about Earth's moon. And this is a funny one. Just so we're not discriminated, we ain't misogynists around here. Women have eyes too. Axe, just stop saying it's billions of miles away. It's clearly not. This is in reference to Elfangor, so it makes sense that he would be talking to our parents rather than my parents, because they both have the same parents. Same again with this sentence, it makes much more sense that he would say our parents rather than my parents. This one just keeps things more consistent, more logical, so Cassie had already begun to change, so she was in mid-morph. And also they added words where previously it just didn't feel like there were enough words to make the sentence make sense. This is a big one, so we're talking about Hawk-Bajir not specifically, but that's where the change is. So Axe is going on about every species fighting wars. The Hawk-Bajir having a biological time clock that set them all warring every 62 years. That was obviously not true. The Hawk-Bajir were pretty much peaceful all the time. So in the edit, that was changed. Now the Hawk-Bajir are peaceful before the Yeerks enslaved them. They are a rare exception. Okay, so that's a useful change. Yeah, Axe, you aren't an Andalite warrior yet. Get it right. Don't fly above your station. I think this is just another example of those were stats from back in the late 90s, and now we're in 2011. I wonder what would be changed to now. This one is subtle. Instead of a comma, it just says and then quickly. This one makes more sense as well. A prince that breaks the law or a prince who breaks the law. Has anyone ever said, do you expect me to feel badly? Is that even a word? It's like bigly, isn't it? This one just makes things a bit more clearer because Tobias flew into the observatory when Eslin showed up. So it wasn't clear how much of the conversation he had heard. And so this change just tries to make that a bit clearer to us, the reader. And the touching conversation references what Eslin said to Axe earlier, just around the time that Tobias was about to fly in. This is a weird one. So lead still exists. I don't know why they felt the need to change this to concrete. In fact, I think it sounds worse. I think it was fine the way it was. Billions of miles, yada yada yada, blah blah blee. Yeah, you want to make sure you're away from humans, not just human homes, Axe. And we're going to get a few examples of them being correct now about venom glands rather than poison glands. Clarification here, they had to put the word in small animals. Yes, get it right about the noodle liquid. Once again, what is the problem with further? Why does it have to be farther? The poison! No, it's the toxin, you dolt. Look, for the last time, just get it right, Catherine. You talk about how much you love animals, but you don't even know the basics. What is the problem with the word hooked? Do kids not know what that means? Am I just a boomer? And finally, billions again. Get it right, Axe. And that's it. That's all the edits I found. It's probably not all of them. And if you do know of any that I've missed, please do put them in the comments below. If you're watching this video and you're interested if there were any I missed, hopefully that means you scroll down to the comments and you'll see people saying he missed this one or he missed that one. But hopefully I found some that you haven't found before if you've been actively searching. I know that there's some on Seropedia, and hopefully I've found some that Seropedia hasn't. Not saying that they've done a bad job. It's actually quite difficult to do. Because you've got to sit down with 2 books, and I've also got the audiobook going in the background, and you have to pay exact attention to what's being said, what's on the page. But that's that. Book 8, I think, has the best changes. That and Book 1. So Book 1 and Book 8 are the best, because there's a lot of stuff in Book 8 that needed to be edited. Like the whole billion miles away thing. That needed changing. The Hawk Bajir being peaceful. That needed changing. So there were quite a few necessary edits in there, unlike something like Book 4 or Book 7, where it was pretty much all trivial. The thing with these edits is sometimes, yes, it is necessary, like those times that I just mentioned. Sometimes it's necessary if, say, a business goes out of business and there's a new one that they have to put in. So, or it changes name, like JC Penney, for example. Sometimes grammatical errors do come up, and that is no exception with these books, so where that happened, it was changed, and that is for the better. The one negative about the edit is that it does take out some of the character. It takes out word like creepazoid or freakazoid, or we hung out, or take a pill, or whatever it was. Take your pills or whatever. It just takes the edge off where it doesn't need to be taken off. It takes some of the colourful words out of there and just replaces it with naff, basically. I can't imagine what a rewrite would be in 2023, because I think we're in a totally different world than we were back in 2011, honestly. 12 years down the line, especially since like 2016, where we had the whole social justice movement. Whether you agree with that or not, you know, it's made a lot of changes. How would things be different in the Animorphs books if they were written now than back in 2011 when they went through a re-edit? Who knows how different it would be? I reckon there'd be a lot more different now than there would be back then. For example, Marco saying, "Oh, these girls are all dogs." He wouldn't say that these days. Marco's like a massive... He's a bit of a dick. He's a bit of a lad, you know. And I personally, that's fine in the right context. You know, if it's done in a banterous sort of way. But I don't think you can get away with that these days, so yeah. But what am I talking about? I just think that these edits, in some cases, take away the colourful, fun language, like words like freakazoid. I mean, just those, it just adds that little bit of extra character to what you're reading, and it just takes it away. And why would you take Arnold Schwarzenegger out? It's not as if people have forgotten who he is. Even the youth of today know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is, surely. If not, give them a slap around the head. They're obviously broken human beings. In fact, I wouldn't even call them human beings. I would call them rubbish bins. They resemble and act like rubbish bins. Yes. I'm being facetious, by the way. You see, 2023, you know, I can't just say that and expect people to know it's a joke. I've got to clarify. You know, that's how crap we are as a society now, that we can't tell a joke from what's not. Jesus Christ. But those are the changes. If you think of any that I haven't caught, please do put it in the comments below. I hope you appreciate the work that I put into this. It did take a while. I was basically sat at my computer with the audiobook playing in the background, with the original version in one hand, and the reissue in the other, like just reading through like that, thinking, all right, is that comma in the right place? Yeah, I think that's the right... Did the audiobook say a different word there? Oh, it did. It's only done it a couple other times. Yeah, it was hard work. Why have I done this video? Because I wanted to. And someone's got to do it. And I just find it interesting, the sort of things that they changed. So, anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this 2-part review of the reissues from 2011. And there's pros and cons. What else can you say? It's just sort of in the middle somewhere. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Ta-ra. From somewhere in the Animorphs universe. Bye.